Peace and love, black families. The Prince of Pan-Africanism, Dr. Umar Johnson, coming to you again, live and direct, Johannesburg, South Africa. Today, I want to talk about bedwetting and African children. Bedwetting and African children. I've been getting some emails from African parents, from the UK, from the US, about this bedwetting thing, even outside of the UK and the US. So I want to talk about bedwetting and African children today. That's going to be the topic. I hope all you guys went to go see the Nat Turner movie. Let's support our brother Nate Parker on the Breakfast Club interview. I do not condone him having a white wife, obviously. Okay, but Nat Turner is very, very important in our history. And I think we need to support him so that other brothers and sisters like him can be successful putting out docudramas about real life untold periods in African history. So I wanted to do well so that other black film producers and directors can also be given those big time budgets that are needed to actually finance the Marcus Garvey story as a movie, finance the George Jackson docudrama, finance the Frederick Douglass docudrama, finance the Mao Mao docudrama, finance the Haitian Revolution docudrama. So we have to support it, irrespective of the fact that we take issue that the brother has a white queen, which is obviously a contradiction, but we all have our contradictions. So I just want to big the brother up. I'm going to support him. Unfortunately, the Republic of South Africa will not allow Birth of a Nation to be shown in any of the theaters here. So Dr. Umar will not get a chance to see the film while I am here in Africa. It might be in Kenya. Maybe it's in Nairobi or Mombasa when I get to East Africa the week after next. Okay. But be that as it may, if I cannot see the movie in Africa, I'm hoping that it is still in the theaters when I get back home November 1st. And of course, you guys know that 10 days after I get back home on November 11th, we will actually be remembering the unfortunate execution of Nat Turner. Nat Turner was hanged for leading his revolution on November the 11th of 1831. So he was hung on 11/11. Okay, so that's a very significant spiritual date because 11/11 represents perfect synchronicity. And so the meaning for me suggests that what Nat Turner did was in fact, as he claimed, divinely inspired. I don't think it was a coincidence that the revolution began on my birthday, August the 21st, which is also the birthday, one of the original birth dates of Jesus the Christ, another black crucified revolutionary. So the revolution begins on August the 21st, the birth of Jesus Christ, and then the leader of the revolution is hanged on November 11th. Perfect synchronicity. There are no coincidences in divine order. So, with that being said, let's talk about the night's topic, which is bedwetting. Bedwetting in black children, that is something that parents have to struggle with. I hear about it from time to time. It even gives a lot of our children a lot of issues as well. So we want to talk about the bedwetting. Okay. The first thing I want parents to know and understand about bedwetting is that most children do not wet the bed on purpose. Let me say this again. Parents, please understand. Most children do not wet the bed on purpose. Okay. Now, the first thing that has to be ruled out is whether or not the child was appropriately potty trained, especially when you're dealing with younger children. Did you appropriately potty train them? And in dealing with potty training, I need parents to understand that the self-esteem of children is largely set by the conclusion of their fifth birthday. For many of us, our self-estimations and levels of pride have been lost parents by the end of fifth grade. Excuse me, by the end of our 5th year of age. By 5 years old, your working self-esteem level has largely already been fixed, okay, by 5 years old. I'm saying that to say that you need to be very careful not to verbally abuse your children when you are potty training them. You need to be very careful when you are potty training them. Do not verbally abuse your children. Reward them when they have a good potty day, okay? And encourage them to do better when they have a bad potty day. Young children under the age of 5 should not be punished for being unsuccessful on the potty. They should be rewarded when they do well. That's all you have to do. Reward them when they do well and encourage them when they don't do well. Now, this is a little bit different formula than what we use when we talk about behaviors that children can automatically control. Do you understand? So in my book, I talk about the behaviors that children can automatically control. Okay? Goofing off, not paying attention, not doing your homework. Those are the behaviors that children can automatically control. Right now, we're talking about potty training. Okay? We're talking about a biological function that must be brought under the control of the child. A biological function that must be brought under the control of a child. They're not born with the ability to regulate their defecation, their feces. Okay? You can compare it to someone learning how to swim. Okay? When you're born, you're not born with the ability to control breathing. You're not born with the ability to self-suffocate. Okay? You have to be taught how to control your breath in order to swim long distances of time. Okay, long distances over a period of time. So it's the same with potty training. We have to teach our children how to bring this natural, unconscious behavior, under conscious thought. Okay, a child can go to bathroom sleep. Do you understand? Okay. The only reason why we don't go to bathroom in our sleep anymore is because we have brought the biological function of the release of feces, okay, in urine. We have brought that under conscious control, okay? Now, I see folks giving the advice, and that's cool. Drinking a glass of milk, I can't vouch for that. I'm coming at this scientifically as a therapist. It might work, but I'm only talking about what I know works. So I see a lot of different remedies popping up on the feed, and that's good because this is a conversation for the whole family. So I'm glad you guys are throwing them out there, and if people want to test them out, they could test them out. But I'm going over what has worked in therapy with me working with our children. So I'm coming from a scientific versus a community folktale perspective. But by all means, use the strategies that parents are throwing out if you think that works. But if you do what I say, I know this works. Okay. So with the young kids under 5, reward them when they do well at the potty, encourage them when they don't do well. The worst thing you can do is verbally abuse a kid because they peed in the bed or didn't make the potty. The worst thing you can do is physically abuse or spank a kid because they didn't have a good potty day or wet the bed. Okay, most children do not wet the bed on purpose. They wet the bed because they have not yet brought under conscious control the unconscious impulse to relieve the body of useless matter. Okay, so when we talk about kids, and I'm just going to roughly say 7 years and older, when we're talking about 7 years and older, okay, the child is still wetting the bed. What should we do? Okay, rule out fear. You do have to rule out fear. If you live in a scary house and the kid got to go downstairs to use the bathroom in a place that looks like Freddy Krueger's or Michael Myers' home, chances are they might be too scared to go downstairs or walk down that lonely, cold hallway, okay? And instead they try to hold their urine through the night and they end up peeing on themselves, okay? They try to hold their urine through the night and they end up peeing on themselves. So you do have to rule out fear. But in my experience, fear has very little to do with why children urinate in the bed, okay? So this is what you need to do. If the child is still urinating in the bed, first thing I want you to do, stop verbally abusing them. Stop talking about them to their siblings and their peers. Stop announcing to the whole family that so-and-so wet the bed last night, okay? All you're doing is attacking the self-esteem and dignity of your child. All you're doing is lowering self-esteem. Whenever you insult a kid for wetting the bed, whenever you tell their brothers on them, whenever you let their siblings joke about them and make a game about the fact that they cannot control their urine at night, all you're doing is lowering your child's self-esteem. And I don't have to tell you how sensitive. I don't have to tell you how sensitive, okay, from 3 to 13 can be in self-esteem levels, okay? Now, we know the self-esteem is largely fixed at 5, okay? But then there's still a sensitive period from 5 until about 13 where you can make the self-esteem stronger or you can make it worse. So you can look at birth to 5 as the critical period, and you can look at birth to 13 as the sensitive period. You can say one thing to a child at 8 years old, and it can change the way they see themselves for the rest of their lives. How many of us have been told things as a young child that still mess with us to this day, even if we know it wasn't true? So you need to be very, very careful about what you say to children, okay? You working with your child to help them overcome their bedwetting behavior should be a private ordeal. It should be private. Helping your son or daughter stop wetting the bed should be a secret society. Mom, dad, and that child. Big sister isn't involved. Big brother isn't involved. Now, let me clarify. If the child shares a room with their sibling, if the child who's wetting the bed shares a room with their sibling, then you may have to work that out. Because if that sibling isn't supportive, and if that sibling isn't compassionate, you may have to move them out of the room. You understand? Because if the kid is younger than the sibling, then that sibling might be bullying them, verbally abusing them, and the child never tells you because they're scared of their older brother or scared of their older sister. And on the flip side, if the sibling is older and the younger sibling knows that the big brother or big sister is wetting the bed, they might go and tell their friends or say things that can hurt their older siblings' pride. So it's best that bedwetting children be in their own room. And if not, you need to have a serious conversation with the other child. You need to have a serious conversation with the other sibling that's sharing that room so they understand that under no circumstances will you verbally abuse, will you disrespect, or will you make a mockery of your brother or sister's issue. Make sure you deal with the other siblings in the home, because sometimes parents don't verbally abuse the bedwetting sibling, but the other siblings will verbally abuse the bedwetting sibling. So make sure you get control over the home. Okay. So I'm going to focus on bedwetting more than defecation. I'm going to focus on bedwetting more than defecation. And the reason I'm going to focus on bedwetting more than defecation is because it's hard to defecate once you start digesting solid foods, because it requires you to operate your anal muscle in order to defecate. So when you go to the bathroom, okay, the way we eat, when you start eating solid foods, it requires you to operate your anal muscle to defecate. Now, when young children, breast milk, baby food, it just comes out like water. So they can unconsciously defecate, before the age of 3. But once you start getting older, it requires a little bit more of conscious control. Okay, by the time you're 7 or 8, it's almost impossible to defecate without knowing it. Okay, so I'm going to save defecation for the end. We're basically talking about urine, because if the child is defecating at 7, 8, 9, 10, I'm suspecting another problem. And I'm going to talk about that at the end of this video, towards the end, after we cover the bedwetting. So some simple techniques for parents. Simple techniques for parents. Number one, scientifically investigate and find out when your child is wetting the bed overnight. Okay, so my approach to eliminating bedwetting, like my approach to eliminating misbehavior, like my approach to eliminating white supremacy, is scientific. Everything I do is scientific, okay? So the first thing you have to do is find out, when is he wetting the bed? Now, children tend to wet the bed at the same time. Children tend to wet the bed at the same time every night, okay? Are they wetting the first third of the night? Are they wetting the second third of the night? Or are they wetting the last third of the night? So let's say your kids go to bed at 8 o'clock. They wake up at 6 o'clock. So they in bed for 10 hours. We can basically break that down to 3.3 hours. First third of the night, second third of the night, last third of the night. Okay, most kids, scientifically speaking, wet the bed the first third of the night. Very few kids wet the bed the last third of the night, okay? And for the kids who don't wet the bed the first third of the night, they're more than likely to wet the bed the second third of the night. So find out when your child is wetting the bed. Are they wetting the bed the first third of the night? Or are they wetting the bed the second third of the night? Or are they wetting the bed the third third of the night, okay? First third, second third, or the last third, okay? Once you know when they wet in the bed, half your problem is over. The biggest problem with bedwetting in parents is they have not scientifically investigated when the child wets. Once we know when they wet, okay, once we know when they wet, then we can break it. Okay, so how do you find it out? This is how you find out when the child wets the bed. For a whole month, get a calendar. I want you to get a calendar. You're not going to hang it on the wall because remember, this is a secret experiment. No one knows except mom and dad and the child. So I want you to get a calendar. Okay, keep it in your bedroom, in your drawer, keep it in your pocketbook. Fellas, keep it in your back pocket, no man bags, okay? And what you're going to do is every night, you're going to, for 30 straight days, okay, you're going to go into your child's room scientifically. You sent them to bed at 8 o'clock. Now, you know they're not going to fall asleep till like 9, right? So guess what you're going to do at 9 o'clock? You're going to come without the child even knowing. You're going to pat the bed to see if they wet. They didn't wet. You go back. You come back another hour, 10 o'clock. They didn't wet. You come back again, 11 o'clock. They didn't wet. You come back again, 12 o'clock. They wet. So now we know that John wets the bed on the first night between, okay, 11 p.m. and 12 p.m. So you're going to write that on your calendar. Night number 1, he wet between 11 p.m. and 12 p.m. And then guess what you might do? Guess what you're going to do? You're going to wake him up. Not to punish him, not to ridicule him. You're going to wake him up to change the sheets. This is strategic. You know why you're going to wake him up to change the sheets? Okay? Because you're training his unconscious mind to wake up around the time that he needs to go to the bathroom, right? So that's the first night. You tracked it. He wet at 12, between 11 and 12, because you checked the bed at 11, it was still dry. You checked the bed at 12, he had wet. So he wet sometime before 11 and 12. After you write it down in your calendar, you're going to go get some fresh sheets. You're going to wake John up. Wake up, son. You know, I noticed you wet your bed. No problem. We're just going to clean it on up. Okay, go change your clothing. In fact, go jump in the shower real quick. Okay, and sometimes you got to think about the shower because the shower might wake the kid up, and we still want them to get their sleep. So sometimes the shower not good. If the shower stimulates your kid, don't let them take the shower. Just change the clothing, dry them off, and let them go back to sleep. You can handle that after they go to school. Okay, because it's all about loving our kids and looking out for our children. Okay. So, all right, you put him back to bed. Okay. Once he goes back to bed, okay, you're going to go to bed. You're not done. You're not done. Okay. You have to go back and check at 1 o'clock to see if John wet again, because some kids wet more than once during the night. So you're not done. You have to find out if your kid is a single wetter or a double wetter. Some kids are triple wetters. Most kids are single wetters. Most kids are single wetters. You get a few double wetters. Rarely do you get triple wetters, okay? So you got to come back and check his bed again at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. He wakes up at 6. The bed ain't been wet. So you know, so far, based on one night, you have a single wetter. So then you do the same thing the next night. Now I know some of you are saying, Doc, what about my sleep? And to what I say to that is you have to give up the things you love to do so you can do the things you want to do. And because you love your son or your daughter, you want to train them on how to control, their bodily releases, because this is going to build their self-esteem once they're able to do it effectively. So you're going to have to sacrifice 1 month. Yes, you're going to have to sacrifice 30 days to figure this out. But guess what? If it's 2 of you in the house, if you have a mother and a father, mother and a stepfather, you don't have to wake up. Tonight, you're going to take care of this. Tomorrow, y'all alternate. Y'all can alternate. So 15 days for mom, 15 days for dad. But someone definitely has to do this for 30 days, okay? So the second night, you're going to do the same thing. He wets at 11. But guess what? For the first week of the experiment, we can't take no chances. So when you put him to bed at 8, you're going to check at 9, you're going to check at 10. We cannot assume that he's going to wet only at 11 o'clock. That was only one day. So you have to do it again. That whole first week, you got to check to see if he wets at 11 and if he is a single wetter. The first week is going to tell us what time they wet and if they are a single wetter. Okay? What time they wet and if they are a single wetter. Okay? Second week, we're going to repeat the same thing as the first week. Second week, we're going to repeat the same thing as the first week. Why? Because 1 week is not enough time to really know if your child is a single wetter or a double wetter, or if the fact that they wet between 11 and 12 o'clock week 1 doesn't mean they're going to wet between 11 and 12 o'clock week 2. He might start wetting between 3 and 4 week 2. So the first 30 days is to find out his system, okay? What is his bedwetting schedule? What is your daughter's bedwetting schedule, okay? Now, after the 30 days is over, we now have a pretty good idea of what we're dealing with. So let's say you pretty much found out that your kid is a single wetter between 11 and 12. We pretty much know between 11 and 12, and he's a single wetter. He's not a double, okay? So guess what we're going to do? We're going to let the kid know. We know when you wet. You wet between 11 and 12. So what we're going to do is mommy and daddy are going to wake you up at 11 o'clock every night so you can go to the bathroom. Okay? And then he goes back to bed, and guess what? Problem is solved. And after about 90 days of waking your son up or daughter at at 11 o'clock in the morning, you're training the brain to wake them up. Do you understand? That's why some of us could wake up at the same time, because anything you do repetitiously will automatically be handed over to your long-term storage in the unconscious. So after 90 days of waking your son up, for 90 days, okay, his brain will start waking him up on his own. Now, I know you said I had to do 30 days of studying, and now I got to do 90 days of waking up at 11 o'clock. I don't feel like doing this. Well, guess what? You have to do this. Okay? You have to do this to teach your child. Now, here's why y'all have to do this. Because the neurological communication system between a child's bladder and the brain doesn't develop in all children at the same time. Let me say this again. In order for you to wake up to go to the bathroom, when your bladder gets full, there is an electrical signal, a neurological impulse that is sent from your bladder up to your brain through the central nervous system. Okay? So the bladder communicates with the brain through the central nervous system that I need to release myself. In some children, that communication system doesn't develop at 5. It doesn't develop at 7 for some kids. It doesn't develop at 12. It might not fully develop until 14 or 16 or 18 or 21 or 25 or 30. I've had people in therapy who still wet the bed regularly or occasionally beyond the 30th birthday because the connection ain't there between the bladder and the brain. And then all of a sudden, okay, the connection just appears. But you don't want to wait on the connection to develop itself. So what you're going to do is train the conscious mind to wake up at a certain time. So you're not even relying on the bladder to communicate with the brain anymore. Okay, you are relying on the brain to wake up at a certain time so the child will realize I need to go to the bathroom. Okay, so you're taking the alternative route. Okay, the most direct route is the bladder telling the brain the kid needs to go to the bathroom. The alternative route is for you to train the brain at the time that the child wets so they can get up and go to the bathroom. Okay, so that's what we're dealing with here. Okay, let me say this. Verbally and physically abusing your child for wetting the bed, or verbally and physically abusing your child for anything. Let's just say the child is a victim of child abuse or verbal abuse. Guess what? That affects the central nervous system to communicate with the brain. Did you hear what I just said? If your child is being bullied or beat or victimized, or you're always cursing at him or telling him he's going to be just like his daddy or whatever the case is, anxiety affects the nervous system. Okay, we know this, right? Because you ever been to Great Adventures or Dorney Park or Disneyland and you got on Space Mountain and Space Mountain was flipping you up and down and you almost what? Peed on yourself. Okay, how did you almost pee on yourself when you took that roller coaster? Because your fear affected your nervous system. And when your fear affects your nervous system, it affects your bodily organs to function. So you got so scared that your bladder, okay, lost control of your urine and released it while you were on the roller coaster. The same thing happens inside of our homes. If the child is being abused by the parent or picked on or beat on by an older sibling, guess what? The bladder is now weakened, traumatized, distracted, cannot execute its function of holding the urine and releasing it until it's ready. And guess what? The child is peeing on itself because the bladder can't even function because of all the trauma and emotional anguish going on in the child's mind. This is where you get this whole thing about he was so scared, he shit on himself, right? We've all heard this, right? He was so scared, he almost shit on himself. Well, how does being scared lead to him defecating? Because when you are afraid, the central nervous system is compromised. Your heart start beating, okay? Your lungs go into full operation. Emotions can override the central nervous system. So an abused child will have trouble learning how not to wet the bed. So don't make the problem worse by verbally or physically abusing a child who wets the bed. I was in a therapy session with a dad who beat his son whenever he wet the bed. I said, why are you beating him? Because he wet the bed. That's because he cannot control his bladder, sir. You have to train him, not beat him. And by you beating him, he may never learn how, because now the bladder, okay, is compromised because the central nervous system has been weakened by all the abuse that this boy is experiencing. Put the belt away, okay? Remember what I always say, a child raised effectively never has to be spanked a day in his life. So, we know when the child wets, we know they're a single wetter. You're going to go get a calendar, another calendar, okay? A dry erase calendar. I recommend you get one that's 2 months, 3 months, but if you want to do 1 month, so be it. Do not throw the calendars away. You have to keep the calendars. You're going to hang the calendar up in the child's room if they have their own room. If they don't have their own room, you're going to keep the calendar in a private place that only the child and the parents can see it. Okay? You're going to get 2 different color markers, or you could use one marker but 2 different symbols. Okay? When the child wakes up in the morning, before breakfast, right after breakfast, you're going to check the bed, right? If the child has a dry day, what you going to say? Congratulations, John. You had a dry day. I'm going to put a smiley face up here on the calendar. Dry day. Give me a hug, son. I love you. Keep up the good work. We proud of you. Okay. The next day, John wet. You might put a sad face or just a different color symbol. Okay. It's okay, son. You wet the bed. This is going to take a while, but mommy and daddy are committed to teaching you and helping you build control over this. Don't think you're less than any other kid. Don't think we don't love you because you're wetting the bed. Sometimes the communication system between a person's bladder and their brain doesn't develop at the same time. It's not your fault. It's biological, son. It's not your fault. But mommy and daddy are here to help you train your bladder and your mind to wake up at a certain time so you can release. We love you. We not mad at you. Go ahead and change the sheets up. Put those other ones in the washer. We'll take care of them. Okay? Give me a hug. I love you. You better not let this bother you. You my son, and I love you unconditionally. Okay? All right. Third time. Okay? He had another dry day. And then what you do, okay, is you reward the kid if they had a successful week. Okay? So a successful week might be what? 4 out of 7. You might say, hey, John, because you're wetting the bed every night, 4 dry nights equals a good week, okay? And if you have a good week, guess what? When we go pick out the scary movie that the family going to watch Friday night, you're going to pick out the scary movie. You're going to help mommy make the dinner for the family for that night, okay? And so then that's what we're going to do, all right? And this is going to motivate him to do better because you're not punishing him when he messes up. You encourages him when he messes up. But you punish him, you encourage him when he messes up, but you reward him when he does well. So once John has 3 straight weeks, because 3 weeks is what I consider the criterion of mastery. 3 weeks is what I consider the criterion of mastery. So once John has had 4 dry days out of 7, 3 weeks in a row, guess what? We're going to move up to the next level. So since it was 4 out of 7 and he met that 3 weeks in a row, we're going to move up. I want 5 days out of 7. John, daddy wants 5 days out of 7. And then he gives you 5 days out of 7 3 times in a row. Now I want 6 days out of 7. And then 7 days out of 7. And before you know it, John ain't wetting the bed no more. Okay, you can eliminate bedwetting in 6 months or less. Let me say this again. You can eliminate bedwetting in 6 months or less, provided that the child is not being physically, verbally, sexually abused. Okay. When am I coming to the West Coast? Tentatively Sacramento, January the 7th or 8th. Tentatively Sacramento, the Sunday. I think that's January the 8th. But of course, I'll be in Oakland, California for the National Independent Black Parent Association Conference. Oakland, California, Friday and Saturday, January 27th or 28th. If there's anyone from the National Independent Black Parent Association on this video tutorial, go ahead and drop your contact information so people can scroll up or down in case they want to join a chapter of the National Independent Black Parent Association. And ultimately, we need to have everybody join. And you don't have to be a parent. 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 You don't have to be a parent to join or lead a chapter of the National Independent Black Parent Association. Because in African culture, all the children belong to us. In African culture, all the children belong to us, so we are all parents, whether we have children or not. Very important that we understand that, okay? So, you're going to put the calendar up, reward him when he does well, encourage him when he doesn't do well, okay? Now, let me say this. Starving your child of thirst so they don't wet the bed does not work, okay? Starving your child of thirst, okay, starving them of liquids so they don't wet the bed, that doesn't work. Now, it is true. No bedwetting child who cannot wake up on his own, who doesn't have a good communication between bladder and brain, no bedwetting child should be overdosing on liquids, okay, 2-3 hours before it's time to go to bed. I agree. But you have certain parents who are so strict with the bedwetting kids that they might only let them drink 2 glasses of whatever from the time they get home to the time they go to bed. That's a form of child abuse. Children need water. They're growing. They need some juice, some apple juice. Okay, so it's okay to pull back, but don't have them thirsty as hell at 6 o'clock and they don't go to bed to 9 o'clock, okay? Now the child is thirsty. The child is throat dry. I can't drink nothing because mommy and daddy don't want me to go to the bathroom myself. Okay, don't punish the child's nutrition and diet so they stop bedwetting, okay? Just work with them and teach them how to regulate this situation, okay? Now, with that being said, let me say that a child who is being abused, who never wet the bed before, can mysteriously start wetting the bed. Okay, let's be clear about that. You said, my son never wet the bed. He's 9 years old. He's starting to pee on himself. Emotions. What did I say? Emotions compromise the functioning of the central nervous system. Emotions. Your child never wet the bed, and all of a sudden out the blue, they wet in the bed. Something's going on. Something's going on. Okay, so we need to find out what that is. Okay, now, when you're dealing with defecation, okay, first of all, when anybody comes to me talking about my child is 8, 9, 10, they defecating in the bed, I have to potentially suspect some form of sexual abuse. Okay, I have to. Okay, because since defecation requires some use of the conscious use of the anal muscles, that means that child, in many cases, is defecating consciously. Why is this kid defecating? Now, in my clinical experience, okay, and in my experience as a school psychologist in the schools, most of the kids who I met, and it's only been a few, but most of the kids I met who have defecation problems, nearly every last one of them was a victim of trauma. Nearly every last one of them was a victim of trauma. Okay, if a little girl is defecating, okay, 6, 7, 8, she defecating in the bed on a regular basis, okay, I'm going to recommend that the mother and or father take her in for a psychological consult. Okay, just a meeting with the psychologist or social worker or licensed professional counselor to rule out sexual abuse. Okay, same thing with boys. Okay, one of the best ways for a boy to psychologically defend himself from being sodomized is to defecate. So the person who is perpetrating the sodomization no longer wants to sodomize the child. I've had this. I've had boys who defecated at night because they were afraid of being raped. Okay, normally by a family member. They were afraid of being raped. And the best way to protect themselves from being physically and sexually assaulted was to stink up themselves, to stink up the bed, okay? To stink up the underwear so the perpetrator of the violence didn't come forward anymore. This is true. I'm going to tell you a true story I had. I was a school psychologist at a school in Philadelphia. A young lady went into the bathroom, middle school girl. She defecated. She was not intellectually disabled. She had no psychological disturbance whatsoever. She went into the bathroom and she spread her feces all over the girl's bathroom. Let me say this again. She spread her feces all over the girl's bathroom. I was called by the principal. They said, Dr. Umar, I wasn't doctor yet. Mr. Johnson, we need you to come on in here. We have a child who is in the bathroom and his feces spread all over the walls, all over the stall, the door. And before I even got there, I said, I'm going to tell you right now, if this child is not mentally retarded, this child is not schizophrenic, we automatically going to have to screen her for possible sexual abuse. I said, contact the mother and or father, have them at the school when I get there. I was at another charter school, so I had to race across town. And get to the other charter school. And when I got there, I think the mother was not there yet. The mother couldn't get off, whatever the case may be. But they told me that the mother was very, very upset at me, And I finally had a chance to speak to the mother. The mother cursed me out. Who do you think you are? What kind of school psychologist? I said, listen, this child has to be taken to the psychiatrist. I want her to go to an emergency room right now. You're going to take her up to Chew and what is it? Y'all know Germantown Hospital. That's the mental health emergency center for children in Philadelphia. I said, you're going to take her up there. She's going to get an emergency psychiatric consult to include potential suicidality. Okay? Because I have professional reason to believe that your daughter may have been sexually abused. No. I said, if you don't, I'm going to call Child Protective Services. You can take her, or I'm going to have them white racist ass social workers downtown take her. So we finally got the mother. To take the child to the crisis center. And every one of you should know the mental health crisis centers in your city. Every city has them. Every city has them. And if you don't have a designated mental health crisis center, then that means that the regular hospital is the crisis center. Let me say that again. If you don't have designated mental health crisis centers, then the emergency room at any hospital is automatically the designated crisis center. Every hospital has a psychiatrist on call who they can call up and say, listen, we got a mental health emergency, psychological emergency. We need you to come in right away and do this assessment, okay? Get them to the emergency room. If you live in Philadelphia, we have certain hospitals that are designated, okay? Germantown Hospital for Children, Episcopal Hospital, Thomas Jefferson downtown is also a designated mental health hospital in Philadelphia. So wherever you live, you can probably just Google it. You should just Google it. Mental health crisis centers in my city. You should just Google it so you know where they are, especially if you're in the mental health field. Okay, so anyway, we found out that the girl was being sexually abused on a regular basis. I don't want to, was it the stepfather or the father or the uncle? But it was somebody, I think it was the dad or the stepdad. But it was a man in the home that was molesting this girl. And everybody who thought Dr. Umar Johnson was crazy found out I was not crazy. So that girl was recommended for therapy. Everybody got involved because it was child abuse. So we had, the school, not me, but the school had to call Child Protective Services. I hope she's doing okay now, because for a child to be that traumatized with no history of mental illness, no type of intellectual disability, to go into a public school bathroom and spread her feces around at school during the day where the perpetrator is not even present, you can imagine what that young sister must have been going through. And this is why I tell that's why I tell parents, be careful who you let babysit your children. Be careful who you let babysit your children. Be careful who you let babysit your children. Please be careful. Okay, because it only takes one time for a child to be violated. It only takes one time for a child to be violated. So if the child is defecating, does it automatically mean they've been abused? No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you have to consider, since defecation normally requires conscious participation, you have to consider the possibility that the child may have been abused physically, sexually, or emotionally. Okay? Now, there are devices that you can buy that will also help you investigate when your child wets the bed and when your child does not wet the bed. So remember, I talked about the 30-day investigation where you're going to wake up every hour until we can pinpoint when the child wets and whether they are a single wetter or a double wetter. There's another way you can do this. Now, that's the old-fashioned way. It don't cost you no money. You just need a calendar, and you can download a calendar for free, or you can make a calendar, right? So that's the free version. That's the free version. And because it's the free version, it requires a little bit more work. Now, let me give you the easier version, okay? There is a product that you can buy. If I'm not mistaken, Sears used to sell it. I don't know if Sears still sells it. But there's a product you can buy. It's an electric pad that goes under the sheet on your child's bed. It's an electric pad. And what this pad does is it buzzes and vibrates the mattress as soon as the child begins to tinkle, assuming the child doesn't sleep deep. If you got a deep sleeper, the vibrating pad isn't going to work. But if the child is kind of like a light sleeper, okay, you can buy the vibrating pad, not very expensive, less than $100, okay, and you put it under the mattress, and it's plastic, so it can't electrocute the kid or nothing like that. And as soon as they begin to tinkle, the mattress, the pad will vibrate. The child can wake up, go to the bathroom, and finish tinkling. And the good thing about this is the child isn't totally embarrassed because it caught them before they totally emptied out their urine. The child was able to get up and go to the bathroom and let the rest, okay, of the urine out. And then he changes his own sheets and he goes back to bed. His brothers and sisters don't know. This one is good with older kids because nobody know but the kid. Nobody know. You don't even know, okay? Of course, I think you should still do the calendar. You should still do the calendar, okay? But you might say my kid is 18. They don't even want me to know when they peed. Okay, so he's 18. Calendar ain't gonna work for him. You can't say good job, son, to an 18-year-old necessarily who's still wet in the bed. So you might just buy your 18 and 19-year-old, 17-year-old, 16-year-old this pad, okay? And this way, you just keep them with a fresh supply of clean sheets. They wake up, caught it a little bit, let the rest out, flush the toilet, come back, clean up the sheets. Okay, put them in the hamper, throw them in the washer when I wake up in the morning. Put the sheets back on my bed, go to bed, and when everybody wakes up at 6, guess what? He dry. Nobody even know he wet the bed. So if you're dealing with an older teenager, young adult who's still wet in the bed, I would get the padded mattress that vibrates, the vibrating pad that goes under the sheet. Okay, it's a thin pad, very thin, that goes under the sheet on the bed. Okay, that's one product. And then there's another product that is it's these monitors. You know how you have the baby monitors? You know, like when my oldest daughter was young, okay, she would be in her room and she woke up in the middle of the night. And you know, I'm a deep sleeper, so I had this child monitor. I would sleep with it next to my ear, okay, and I would turn it all the way up. So as soon as Anissa began to, you know, get upset, wake up, and I hear that daddy, I know to jump up and go because I'm a deep sleeper. So, you know, I had to have the monitor right next to my ear so I could hear my baby when she called my name, right? Well, guess what? They have the same thing for bedwetting kids. They have these monitors, okay, that are so sensitive that they can pick up the release of urine. And I think they're tied into the mattress as well. So guess what? While you're sleeping, your child is sleeping, they begin to wet the bed. Guess what happens? An alarm goes off in your monitor. An alarm goes off that wakes you up in your bedroom to wake up, run to the kids' room, wake them up, hopefully before they release all the urine so they can still go to the bathroom, release some, and then clean up. Okay, so with younger kids, you might need this. With younger kids, older kids, you could just give them the regular pad. But the younger kids may need this thing where, you know, the monitor will wake up mommy and daddy when I start to pee. Mommy and daddy hear this buzzing noise or alarm noise or music, whatever you program it to do. And then when that happens, they run to the kids' room and wake them up. So if you don't feel like scientifically waking up every hour to investigate when your child wets and how often they wets, I recommend that you buy the monitor, or I recommend that you buy the vibrating bed pad. Okay, so those are two devices that were around when I was in graduate school. There's probably more devices around now, but if you say, look, I'm not waking up every hour, I'm not that committed to my kid, or you might just be too tired, or you might be a deep sleeper yourself, you're not going to get up. So then you might want to invest in a monitor system or the vibrating pad. Okay, so there are tools out there to help you, but don't abuse the kid. Use a calendar. Don't punish them when they wet, okay, but reward them when they have a dry night, okay, that type of a thing, because children are so motivated to please their parents that they will self-regulate their liquid intake without you having to do it if they know that they're going to get a pat on the back by mom or dad for doing a good job. He will automatically not drink that last cup of juice before he goes to bed because he is so motivated to wake up the next day and have mom or dad, okay, pat him on the back and say, we love you, son. Thanks for trying. Good job. That type of a thing. Okay. But in my experience, I've seen a lot of parents do a lot of the wrong stuff. I've seen parents tell grandmom your grandson's still peeing in the bed. Tell the aunt your niece is still peeing in the bed. Do not make this a family issue. You're going to destroy your child's self-esteem. Do not make this a family issue. I've seen the self-esteem of black kids destroyed on the potty by punishing kids who don't get to the potty in time. You ain't got to punish them. Reward them when they do well. Stop paying so much attention to the misbehavior and start paying more attention to the positive behavior. Positive behavior is only going to grow if we reward it. Let me say it again. Positive behavior is only going to grow if we reward it. And the reason why we want to use positive reinforcement versus consequences when it comes to bedwetting versus misbehavior in the home or misbehavior at school is because misbehavior can be controlled by the child consciously. But when you're dealing with bedwetting, the child has to be trained and taught how to bring an unconscious bodily process, such as release of urine, under conscious control. because your body will let urine out. Your body don't need you to pee. Your body does not need you to release urine. Your body will do it on its own. So you have to bring that under conscious control. So it's not under the child's control. Don't punish them. They have to be taught to bring it under control. Okay? So again, if any of you have further questions on bedwetting, you know, we got the Tuesday morning call that we're now going to try to do by way of Facebook Live as much as possible. If you want a private consultation with Dr. Umar Johnson for whatever reason, special ed, behavior modification, treatment, you know, you're trying to decide on what to do about a situation and you just want consultation by phone, it's a $50 donation for that consultation. You can pay it three ways. One is on my website, drumarjohnson.com. You can pay for the consultation there. Okay, you can also just transfer it to me by way of PayPal. My PayPal link is paypal.me/Umar the psychologist, paypal.me/Umar the psychologist. Or if you use Square Cash, if you are a Square Up customer, you can just transfer it to me by way of Square using my phone number 215-989-9858 or my Square ID, which is $ Dr. Umar Johnson. Okay, so I hope this was a benefit to you guys. Stop beating the kids, stop abusing them, motivate them, start waking up in the middle of the night, find out when they wet, find out when they wet. Once you know when they wet, you can stop it. Finding out when they wet is half the solution. Knowing when. My son wets at 3 o'clock every morning, so I wake him up at 2:30. Boom. If you got a multiple wetter, then guess what? You're going to have to wake him up at 2, okay, and then wake him up again at 5 if he's wetting at 5 just before he wakes up. But guess what? Once his brain starts waking up at 2 and 5 on his own, you won't have to worry about it. The only reason why you're waking him up is because you're training the brain. The only reason why you're waking them up is because you are training the brain to do it itself. Okay? What do? We get an alarm, right? You wake up at 6 o'clock to go to work. Before you know it, you wake up at 6 o'clock anyway, because whatever is repetitiously done is automatically handed over to the unconscious, okay? Okay, it's like the white man with slavery. He taught us to hate ourselves for 500 years. So guess what? White man ain't got to tell you to hate yourself no more. You automatically hate yourself. It's automatically been passed over to the unconscious mind. Okay, so I hope this benefited you. If you guys have any other topics you think I need to cover when I do these tutorials, and I just do them whenever an idea pops in my head, I say, let me help the parents out with this, or let me help the parents out with that. But if you have ideas for things I need to do, feel free to let me know so I can make those tutorials. All right? So thanks a lot. Prince of Pan-Africanism, Dr. Umar Johnson. Also, my South African brothers and sisters in Pretoria, we do have a Pretoria date. So we'll be releasing the Pretoria date. Cape Town, can't wait to get to Cape Town. I'll probably be visiting Robben Island again, where all the political prisoners were housed. Robert Sobukwe, Nelson Mandela, and others. Okay, so Cape Town, you the next stop. Cape Town, Dr. Umar coming soon. Peace and love. If anybody needs a copy of my upcoming schedule in Africa or the States, you can text me for it. University of Jomo Kenyatta. I will see you the week after next, God willing. Everybody have a blessed night.